Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we are here to talk about all the things going on in Week 10. We finally have all the teams back. No more buys, no more into this stuff. All right, we are all back, ready to go, and I got some awesome guests with me today. I got Chris Wilds, the Wild Man from the OHIO podcast, and I have Justin Adams from the Nebraska, the Voice of College Football podcast, here to join us today. I'm super excited about it. I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves, and then we'll get into it. Chris, you want to introduce yourself, tell people where they can find the podcast?
Absolutely. I am Chris Wilds. I am from the OHIO podcast. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook at the OHIO podcast. You can also find us on Scarlet and Game on fansided.com, Twitter at the Ohio podcast, and of course we have our own webpage, theohiopodcast.com. You can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Rumble, anywhere you get your podcasts, and of course right here on Big Banter Sports, home of the best conference in all of college football, the Big Ten.
There we go. All right, Justin, you can tell people about where they can find you?
Yes, sir. First off, appreciate you having me on. And y'all can find me over at, like you said, the Nebraska Football at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. You can also follow me at _H-Town Husker on X. And I also have a fantasy football channel called Cheesy Corn Sports. You can follow us there, youtube.com/cheesycornsports. We go live Sunday 2 hours before the games, answer start sits, take calls, all that, trade questions, whatever y'all want to do. We just kind of chat football. And yeah, we have a good time. So
sounds good. All right. Love it. So before we get into it, I just remind everybody, like Chris said, we are brought to you by Big Banter Sports, bigbantersports.com. You can go there for all your Big Ten media needs, football and basketball. You can also like and subscribe to this podcast. We appreciate that. If you're listening on podcast, then please go ahead and give us a rating as well. Let us know what you think about how we're doing. And hey, if you're ever on Rumble, go visit us over on Rumble. Okay, we're over there as well. We put out some content there. We have some nice Rumble friends. So if you're watching from Rumble, say hi in the comments. We appreciate you over there. All right, guys, let's get into this. Okay, let's get into our first game this weekend. We have Ohio State at Rutgers. This is a little bit of a sneaky game, I think. Rutgers, a little bit of a better team than maybe some people think. The odds don't really say it because Ohio State is favored by 18.5 in Piscataway. But I think this could be an interesting game. Chris, what are your thoughts going into this game?
Well, I'll tell you, you're not wrong, JR. You're really not, because Greg Schiano has this team playing very good football right now. I mean, look at it. We are, what, 9 weeks into the season, and these guys are going bowling already. So that's something that we haven't seen from Rutgers in a while. They have the 9th-ranked defense in the country right now. They have an excellent running game. I believe they have the second leading rusher in the Big Ten as we stand right now. Yep. That being said, I don't think that they're going to give Ohio State much of a game. I think you may see a close game, maybe even leading into halftime. But in the end, I think Ohio State's got the horses that they just kind of run away with it at the end. I don't think, Rutgers does not have a great passing game. And the rushing defense that Ohio State presents, I mean, we've shut down Braylon Allen and caused him to lose the ball twice. We shut down Penn State, kept him, I believe, to 59 yards on the ground. That's a great rushing offense there. I really believe that Ohio State's going to shut down that rushing game, make them one-dimensional. So I don't see this being a factor.
Interesting. Justin, what are your thoughts going into this one?
Yeah, overall on Ohio State, the offense does lack in areas, but they play so well on defense that they're able to kind of to counter that. It's winning them games right now. McCord and Devin Brown are banged up, so I'm not sure. Y'all can correct me here. I'm not sure y'all's thoughts on this, but I'm not sure if that's going to limit the playbook at all. If they're gonna shorten that down. Just to kind of limit what they have to do with those injuries. What is the extent of the Devin Brown injury as well? Do you have an update?
Devin's out.
He's out. Sure.
Devin's going to be out.
Okay, cool. Kyle McCord.
I heard that he did practice a little bit this week, so he's getting closer. This week.
But, okay.
Yeah.
But McCord is a go.
Yep. And
I still don't know that they have named whether it's going to be Gebbia or Keinholz who's going to back him up.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be interesting, because
I would have to think it's going to be Gebbia given his experience. He is a guy who's mobile. He's fairly accurate passing. Doesn't have the big arm, but
yeah,
he's efficient.
It might just close the playbook up just a little bit so they can keep Kyle, as healthy as possible. But I just think Ohio State will stop the run well enough. Rutgers does play a very physical style of defense. That's one thing I do notice about Rutgers. They gave Michigan problems in the first half of that game. So, but I think, like he said, I think Ohio State just pulls away late. I got him 27-13 for Ohio State on that one. So
I had 31-10. So
I expect it to be a pretty good game up until probably about midway through the third.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting going into this game with Gavin Wimsatt. I don't think that, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but Ohio State hasn't really faced a dual threat quarterback at all this season, right?
Nobody of great consequence.
Yeah.
No.
Tanner Mordecai would have been, but, obviously he was out last week for Wisconsin. So I do think that's going to be interesting to see Gavin Wimsatt's scrambling ability and some of the RPO, the read options, things like that. They're going to run with him. And I think the Rutgers offensive line is a little bit better than people give it credit for. I'm with you, Chris. I think that eventually Ohio State will pull away. I think they will get some turnovers, kind of force those, and that'll get the offense going a little bit. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of like the Maryland game where maybe after the first quarter we're at, 0-0 or like 7-7, something like that. I wouldn't be surprised. I do think that the Devin Brown injury is going to affect Ohio State more than some people realize because they showed with him in Purdue and also against Penn State when he got hurt was that kind of red zone package they were doing. Because if you've watched Ohio State, they struggle in the red zone this year, right, Chris?
They do. And let me tell you another big thing, and we haven't talked about it much, but probably our most physical back is Mayan Williams, and he's done for the year.
Yep.
So that is something. I mean, don't get me wrong. Chip Trayanum is good, but if you need a tough yard, Mayan Williams was going to get it for you.
It was Chip that got that yard in Notre Dame, though, right?
It was Chip that got that yard at Notre Dame. Absolutely.
Yeah. Of course, they only had 10 players on the field, though, so that helps.
Well, Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman is a disgrace to Ohio State because not only did he badmouth him, but the man can't even count to 12 or to 11, rather. So
yeah. Tell us how you really feel, Chris.
Marcus Freeman catching strays on the channel here.
Hey, he's not in the Big Ten. We don't have to talk well about him.
Exactly. I'm not a fan of the guy either.
I have 31-17 in this one. I think that Rutgers is going to, move the ball down the field a little bit, but I think eventually in the second half, Marvin Harrison Jr. will find some big plays, and they'll open up the offense a little bit more, and that will help them to score. I would pick Ohio State to get 2 or 3 more field goals if Ryan Day would just take them, but Ryan Day treats this offense like, they're going to score every single time. And I'm like, Ryan, you do not have the quarterback to do that. It's 3rd and 1.
That offense, though.
Exactly. Like, all the time. He wants to be that offense, but I think he's having a little bit of a hard time with this identity change. Don't get me wrong. I think he's handled it well. Obviously, they're, undefeated, number 1 team in the country, but I do think he's had a little bit of a hard time not having the quarterback play that he is used to having back there. So, interesting one for sure. You guys have any more thoughts on this one before we get out of this one?
No.
Nope.
All right, well, let's move on to your rival here, Chris. We got Purdue at Michigan. Michigan favored by quite a bit, 32.5. This is an interesting game. I don't think we would normally talk about this second, but with the cheating scandal going on and trying to figure out, is this Michigan team going to be the same team that comes out there and scores 50-plus points and holds the team to under 10? Or is this Michigan team, maybe without their secret weapon, Connor Stallions, visiting Central Michigan this week instead, maybe? Who knows? Maybe without him, are they going to struggle a little bit more? It'll be really interesting to see. Chris, what are your thoughts going into this one?
Well, let me tell you, you could basically set the entire coaching staff for this one and let the players call it for themselves. I've seen Purdue in person. We went over for the Purdue game. And let me tell you, Purdue is just not a good football team. They're a team that's really struggling right now. I don't think Michigan puts up as many points as everybody thinks. But that's only because I don't think they want to. They're going to be content with just running the ball all over Purdue. I've got this one, Michigan 38, Purdue 6.
Justin, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I similar to what he said. I don't think Purdue could win this if Connor Stallions was on their side in this whole thing. So, Michigan, for what it's worth, I mean, they look like a well-oiled machine. You know, every week since Jim Harbaugh come back, they've covered every week after. They didn't cover any spreads before he came back. They've hit the over in every single one of those. Hudson Card is terrible. Sorry, it's just the nicest way I can put it. Last 2 weeks against Ohio State, Nebraska, under 50% completion percentage. Purdue's decimated. You know, they're missing 3 linemen, 3 receivers. Just nothing really is going to go their way in this game. I feel like it's going to be a whole lot of Blake Corum, Roman Wilson, and I think it's going to be 40. I got 45-17. I think even though Michigan doesn't want to score a lot, I don't think they'll have a choice against Purdue, and I think they're just going to score a lot.
So you and I both have them not covering the spread by a half point then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Not covering, but yeah, I do believe they're going to put some points up for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's unfortunate for Hudson Card. I think Hudson Card is more talented than we've seen the past couple weeks because at the end of the day, Nebraska has a much better pass rush than people give them credit
Absolutely,
for.
Yeah.
I think Nebraska is one of the best pass rushing teams in the
8
Big
sacks
Ten.
Purdue, I think.
Yeah, I think at one point they were leading the Big Ten in sacks.
Yep. Week 5.
Yeah, week 5 they were. So, Nebraska is a much better pass rushing team than people give them credit for. Ohio State is as well, even though they don't have the sack numbers, they have the pressure numbers, those kind of things.
Yep.
And so it's going to be really, really hard with the pass rush that Michigan is going to be able to display with those offensive linemen out as well. So I know that Purdue could possibly get some guys back, and I think that's good. But at the end of the day, I'm with you guys. It really doesn't make an impact if Connor Stallions is there or not. I think it'll be interesting to see if they do struggle a little bit in the beginning, like they did against Indiana. I think that'll be a little telling. But again, struggle a little bit is like you guys said, barely not covering.
Yeah, Stallions has already probably thrown those game previews for the next few weeks over. Anyways, he probably already had those.
Right. He seems like the kind of guy who would work ahead when you have 500 plus pages manifesto.
He's buying tickets to every game. Yeah, he's prepared for sure.
What's really sad about that whole thing is they didn't need to do that to win a lot of these games.
It's so good.
And I'll even go as far as to say last year versus Ohio State, our defensive backs spent so much time on their backsides instead of in coverage. They probably would have beat us last year without it. Yep. But you know what? Now they've hung that big question mark over everything they've done for the last 2 years.
Yep.
I was telling somebody this on Twitter the other day. If I understand Michigan fans defending their team. I get it. You want to defend your team by all means. I get that. But if it were me, I'd be pissed off at Harbaugh.
I'm an Astros fan, bro. I've been there.
You have the team, you have the talent, you have the best running back in the Big Ten and Blake Corum. You have the best quarterback in the Big Ten and JJ McCarthy. You have, 2-time Joe Moore winning offensive line coach in Sharon Moore. I mean, you have a stellar defense. You have one of the best defensive lines in all of college football, in my opinion. One of the best secondaries in all of college football, in my opinion. I mean, you have all of this. You don't need to do this. I understand maybe, the big games, you want to try to figure something out for the college football playoffs, but, I hear that they're, scouting Minnesota you should have scouted TCU, but I hear they're scouting teams like Minnesota and Iowa, and no disrespect to those teams, but the talent level is just so much greater for Michigan. You shouldn't even need to do
What's the risk? Yeah, exactly. There's too much risk in that. I mean,
exactly. Just go visit an Ohio State game. Go visit a Penn State game. Those teams that you know.
And for the love of God, don't use your own credit card to buy the ticket.
Well, I do need to get you guys' opinion. Well, let me get my score prediction really fast. My score prediction is 42-10. We can move on to some of this talk about the Central Michigan because I want to get you guys' opinion. So obviously Josh Pate, he's put all the stuff out there about the sunglasses. Everybody's seen the video with the, holding the hat down, and that's hilarious, and all those things. So Justin, we'll start with you first. Is it Connor Stallions on the sidelines of the Central Michigan game?
I can't confirm whether it is or not. I'm going to say if it's somebody connected to Connor Stallions, if it's not him, but okay. I'm going to lean towards it is him. Otherwise, I don't know why he's hiding his face. I really don't know. But there's some direct correlation there to him, I would imagine, because there's a reason this was uncovered. This particular, video was uncovered. I think it was a private investigator that's been doing all this stuff. So there must be good, reasonable cause for them to post this video and say that's him, you know? Yeah. So I'm leaning towards it is.
Ryan Day's brother, Chris?
Let me tell you. These guys.
Well, give me your thoughts. Was it Connor Stallion first and then get into the brother?
Was it? You know, I don't know. I can't say for
There's
sure.
There's no what to believe.
There is a major similarity between the two.
Yeah.
I just the brazenness.
Yeah. What is he looking for
of this team of that team up north? Just the brazenness, the stupidity. It makes my head hurt. And then for these fans and their fan base,
oh, it's bad, dude,
to absolutely be in total denial. These same fans who were yelling for the head of Jim Tressel over a tattoo, the same fans who were yelling for the head of Urban Meyer because of the at-home behaviors of one of his assistants. These guys who, as you mentioned earlier, were yelling for the head of Mel Tucker, which, you know, they weren't saying let it play out when it was Mel Tucker. No, they wanted this man's head.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, well, let's let it play out. You know, it doesn't really matter. You know,
yep.
even if it was something they were doing, you know, you can get that video footage from anybody. You know, yep. You can go on websites. You know what? The fact is, it clearly states in the NCAA rules, going and advanced scouting in the same season is prohibited. Using electronic surveillance to try to record signs is prohibited.
Mm-hmm.
It's cut and dry. They did a recent poll. I heard it this morning, the results. They polled 50 Division I football coaches.
The Athletic article.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm trying to remember what the exact breakdown was, but it seemed to me it was something like, was it about 40% that said this was between a 1 and a 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the worst, 1 being the least. It was something like 35 to 40% of the coaches said this is a Class 5 violation. Yep. Something needs done. These guys and Jim Harbaugh, I mean, don't get me wrong, I do not have a lot of love for Jim Harbaugh. But what I did have at least a little bit of was respect. Mm-hmm. And when you as a coach go out there, as a player, a coach, anything, and you go out there and you cheat the game, you have disgraced yourself. You have disgraced your team. You have disgraced your university. Mm-hmm. Why the University of Michigan itself has not just kicked this guy to the curb? I'm sure it's money, but why they haven't just kicked this guy to the curb and said, you know what? You have just put a black eye on this institution and everything you have accomplished over the last 2 seasons.
Yep.
You have humiliated yourself. You've humiliated us. Get out.
And the fans.
That's what needs to happen.
I think the
fans are in denial.
I think they feel like they're so much a part of the university that like they have to defend this too, as if they're in like court for this. But like they were wrong too, you know, like
they were cheated.
University is about to have to go through this because your coach and your organization couldn't manage what was going on under their thumb, under their umbrella on that sideline.
Are they still going to love Jim Harbaugh when those wins are vacated? Those Big Ten titles are vacated when those CFP appearances never happened in the record books. Are they still going to love Harbaugh then?
It's kind of like it's such a direct correlation to like the Astros situation. Me being an Astros fan, like I was all denial, and then it came back, and then the truth came to light and stuff like that. And I was just kind of downplaying it, dismissing it, like everybody cheats and all this other stuff. Well, then the actual videos came out of the banging the trash cans and all that stuff. And then I just kind of had to turn full heel on it and be like, nah, but I don't give a damn anymore, you know? So it's part of the coping process that they're in right now. So I've been through it, and now I'm on the other side of it, so I can recognize it. It's pretty funny.
It makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? Was it Bill Belichick that was in charge of Spygate, or was it really Tom Brady?
Yeah. We need to open that one back up.
Yeah, my biggest thing for Michigan fans is like I always tell people, your coach is temporary, but your university is really who you root for. It
Absolutely.
baffles my mind how we as college football fans basically just like take the coach and just like make them who our university is. It's like, no, your university is more than that.
Yep.
And I understand that like a coach like Jim Harbaugh coming in and basically saving Michigan from mediocrity, and bringing them back. Obviously, he's going to be well thought of. He played there, all of those things. But still, like, if your coach has brought this scandal upon you and they've brought this embarrassment upon you, I mean, he's completely, hurt the name of which I kind of think is lame, but, they really like it, is, a Michigan man. I mean, he has completely destroyed that. In my mind, you had the Fab Five years ago who did that for basketball, but football has remained relatively clean. And then with all the stuff that's come on with Jim Harbaugh, I mean, I don't think people understand how much wrong Jim Harbaugh has done at Michigan, between the recruiting violations, between the story that came out about the player who they essentially cut because of his injury. Did you guys ever read that story?
Yep.
And he went to Minnesota and he became an NFL player. Like, between all of those things, the Mozzie Smith last year, Schimbeckler, or not, Shimmy Schimbeckler or whatever, like all of these things that Jim Harbaugh has been in charge of. I'm not going to say
he's been
did
one
them.
scandal after another.
Exactly. At a certain point, you just have to say, dude, stop disparaging the name of the university. And
they're defending him.
Exactly. Like, it's easy for me to say, oh, if this was Ryan Day, I'd be so pissed off and mad about it. I would love to say that. But I would think at a certain point, I myself would look at it and be like, dude, you're screwing up the university. Just get out of here.
Hey, I'm ready to hang out Ryan Day after 2 losses to that team up north. Now, you know what? I've had to take and backpedal a little bit now.
Yeah.
I've actually had to rethink this because last year, like I said, I think was a non-factor. But you know what? What was 2021 a non-factor? I don't know.
Yep.
It's it's easy to kind of speculate, and people will say, "Well, Michigan's been so physically dominant, and Michigan has been this, and Michigan," and you know what? They have been. I can't argue that. But you know what? It's a heck of a lot easier to be dominant when you know what the other guy's about to run.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And kind of to your point, like knowing just who your coach is and stuff like that, like, a lot of Nebraska fans don't blame our former coaches for a lot of our demise. We blame guys like Steve Peterson, the athletic directors and stuff like that, because, like you said, they kind of, grow an attachment to these coaches, not understanding that's not who represents the university. They can still root for their university and hold these people accountable and just be, classy about it and not trying to be like, well, doesn't matter, catch me if you can type of deal, or it's too far gone now. We don't know how long we've been doing this. All of our wins are legit. It's a whole lot of coping right now. And they don't know what to say. Every time something comes out, their whole argument changes. So,
yeah. And JR, really to blame on this, just kind of a last point, really to blame in all this too, is the NCAA and the Big Ten, who after they have had scandal after scandal after scandal, have done not a daggone thing to goofball.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I was an RA in college, and I remember my head men's RA telling me, he was like, yes, you're gonna have your buddies in college, but if you just let them get away with stuff all the time, they're just gonna keep getting away with it. Like, and you can say like, oh, that's my buddy, they won't do that to me, but in reality, they're just gonna take advantage of you. Yep. And I feel like that's kind of what's happened here with Jim Harbaugh and with Michigan. Sorry, Michigan fans, I know you love your coach, and I get it, but love your university more than you love your coach. Yep. I mean, that would honestly be my greatest advice to you, because your university does come before your coach. Your coach will come and go, but your university is always going to be there. So stand on that, stand on the principles for them, and stand by your university, putting their foot down to be who they should be. And I agree with you, Chris. Some of it's the Big Ten and the NCAA letting this stuff get away for years and years, and eventually you're at where you're at now. So,
because now their fans are going to have to argue that to the end of time. Every comment section,
I mean, I hold some resentment to toward Urban Meyer a little bit for the Zach Smith situation. Now, I don't think that situation is completely understood. I think as we learn more about it, I think it got more complex than people realize. I'm not going to be an apologist at all for it, but I think it got a little more complex than we realized. But still, that will always be the thought of 2018, and that will always be the thought, for the end of the Urban Meyer era, that you had this scandal and he had to leave because he was dishonest and all these things. And it's like the dude won a national championship. Like if he could have just left the right way, we wouldn't have to worry about all this stuff.
Yep.
So anyway, all right, we'll move on from here. That's some good Michigan talk. I'm sure YouTube, the algorithm, will love that. But let's get on to Nebraska at Michigan State. I'll let you start off with this one, Justin. Nebraska's favored by 3. Michigan State is on, like a 5-game losing streak? They're a 6-game losing streak at this point. It's not pretty, but Nebraska, things are looking up for them in the month of October. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, actually the first, I think, October that we've been haven't had a loss since 2001 or something like that. It's a ridiculous number. Kind of sad, to be honest, but
that's really good for this year.
Yeah, exactly. The defense is playing. I mean, looking at our offense, first off, we have 3 of our original 11 that were on the depth chart to open the season. Completely decimated with injuries. Our starting 2 running backs on the depth chart are gone. Of course, Jeff Sims is terrible. He's out. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, our top receiver, lost him for a season. Marcus Washington, our most, we had receiver after receiver go down, linemen go down, running backs go down. And it's just been kind of this next man up mentality. And what we have right now is we have these young guys who are kind of stepping into their roles and kind of getting experience and getting better as the season progresses. Of course, we got Heinrich Harburg, who, what you see is what you get. He is a football player through and through. He's not going to kill you with his arm. He's not going to quarterback you to death. He's going to try to make plays. He's going to be tough. He's going to be physical. He's going to run the ball, and he's going to try to plow through you and just wear you down. Not a whole lot of explosiveness from this offense. Billy Kemp went down. He was kind of our big dynamic young freshman, but we've had some other guys step in. Emmett Johnson at running back had his best game to date last week, 13 carries, 70-something yards, and a touchdown to close it out there. We had finally a deep ball to Jaden Doss on the left-hand side, just our first deep ball touchdown I feel like we've had this year. Had to have been our longest play from scrimmage, 73 yards. Wow. So that was beautiful to see. The defense tightened up. Run game, 5th best in the nation. Like you said, we're just getting pressure. With the 3-5 defense, it's a lot of disguised blitzing, and I think that's what's making the difference this year, and that's why I think we've made the jump from last year not having all the sacks to this year, is because the way Tony White has his defense schemed up, he's bringing pressures from everywhere. He's, the 3-5, you have, your linebackers can be down. You could have a linebacker up in coverage. It's all a bunch of moving parts. It's very hard to prepare for, and it seems like a lot of these subpar quarterbacks have had a hard time figuring it out. And then we've ran into a couple teams that, we just weren't able to, like Michigan, they're too good. They know what we're doing. So of course we're going to, but yeah, so we're not going to beat you with any consistency. It's just going to be like, we're going to make mistakes. We need our defense to make up for those mistakes. And if they do that, we can win the game. Our offense is good enough to beat some of these lesser opponents. And I think Michigan State is on a downward trajectory. The Mel Tucker thing has them just on a downward slide. So I just think this is a recipe for success. Nebraska's trending up. They're trending down. And I think Nebraska has a pretty solid win here, as long as the ball isn't turned over 5 more times. That's the one thing we can't predict, is turnovers. So that's the hard part in predicting Nebraska games this season, is just how many turnovers are we going to have. I think we had 4 or 5 fumbles last week. We fumbled the opening kickoff. It just isn't pretty, but getting it done, that's all that matters. And it's uglier at Michigan State than it is at Nebraska. And I'm happy. We're 1 win away from bowl eligibility, control our own destiny in the West. Not saying we're going to win the West, but it's nice to be where we're at in building something. It finally feels like we have a coach that knows how to build, and it feels like we're working towards something finally. So,
yeah, I mean, you're tied for first in the West right now.
That Minnesota loss is looming large because we had that one in the bag.
Oh yeah, I guess that's right. Technically, you are behind Minnesota there. So, but still, I mean, it's the West. It's the wild, wild West in the Big Ten. So you never know what could happen. I will say I was thinking about Heinrich Hargerberger earlier today, and I know that's weird. It's probably the most random guy to ever think about, but because I was actually doing my fantasy football and I saw Taysom Hill was available in fantasy football. He's like a tight end QB
Yep.
I screwed
hybrid.
up. I dropped him last week.
Did
Oh
you?
no.
Oh man. But I was sitting there and I was like, you know who reminds me of Taysom Hill? Heinrich Harber.
He makes plays, man. He makes plays.
He's one of those guys that like I feel like you could randomly just put him at tight end in one of these plays and put
Yep.
Jeff Sims out there and he'd be able to do it. I mean, he has the athleticism. He's not really careful with the ball, but again, neither was Jeff Sims, so it's like
He actually has a
pick your
catch on the
poison.
season.
Oh,
I
he
can't
does?
remember. It might have been the Colorado game, but they actually did run him across as a receiver and they threw it to him. Yeah, when
Oh,
Sims
well,
was
see, I was
starting.
thinking exactly what
Yep.
it was. So
Yeah, Sims came in and had he came in for, when Sims came in, I was like, okay, cool. Like, we have a big lead. Let's see what Sims can do. It came in about midfield. Maybe he can like put a drive together. It was like 4th and short, right? Comes in a play, we get a penalty, backs it up, they get a penalty, moves it back to 4th and 1, fumbles the ball, they scoop and score. Jeff Sims is out of the game. I hope that dude doesn't even have a helmet. I hope he's part of the equipment staff this next week. I don't want that dude on the field anymore.
That's hilarious.
Horrible.
Yeah, Jeff Sims probably not going to get another shot. Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
I'll tell you, I really like Nebraska. I do. I like Matt Rule as a coach. And one word comes to mind when I think of Nebraska football right now, and it's scrappy.
Yeah.
I really think they are a tough, scrappy team. For me, I think that like you guys were both have said, Michigan State is a team in a downward spiral.
Yep.
I really like Nebraska to go out there and handle their business, get bowl eligible this week. I think Nebraska wins this one 28-3.
28-3.
I like that.
What's your thoughts on this one? For the score.
Me, I got 27-10.
27-10.
Yep. 27-10.
Man, I'm believing in the offense the most in this one. I got it 31-6. So I think that Nebraska will win this one. I can't believe that the line on this is
that's insane
only 3.
to me. That's insane to me.
Nebraska's going to cover this.
Take that one all day long.
I don't want to jinx them, but
I bet that early.
It's a really, really strange line. So
it could just be the unpredictability of not knowing whether we're going to turn the ball over 37 times or not. But still, Michigan State, I think we would have to just like every time we come out, just hand them the ball for them to win this.
Yeah, Michigan State kind of reminds me of watching The Waterboy when Henry Winkler's watching the clip there of the game. He's like, "Oh, look, we dropped the ball. 1, 2, 3."
Well, from everything I hear, Michigan State has another quarterback controversy because that Sam Leavitt is now they like him because he played really well at the end of the last game. So I just don't know what to make of Michigan State this year with all the. I feel like
a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I feel bad saying this, but it's just kind of the product of what their season is. I feel like some players are kind of quitting. I think Harlan Barnett, we are seeing exactly why he never was a head coach and he was an assistant coach for all these years. Props to him for, being an assistant for so long, but, he's just not cut out to be a head coach. And I think the offensive coordinator is, terrible at Michigan State. So, all in all, this is just not a pretty season for Michigan State. And your biggest hope is you can either get Jonathan Smith or Mark Stoops or somebody like that to come in and kind of save the program. So, but you're not gonna get Matt Rule though. Matt Rule taken. So
it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad when Michigan's doing what they're doing, and Michigan State might not be in a better situation than they are right now.
It always seems like it's this way, where either Michigan State or Michigan is up and the other one's down. It always seems to be this way.
Just need to break off into those lakes over there. Whole state.
All right, let's get on over to Illinois at Minnesota. This one's even closer with Minnesota favored by 2. I'm actually really interested in this game. I'm going to watch it. I'm really excited to see what Athan Kaliak-Manis can do, if he can complete the ball to anybody other than Daniel Jackson, because that seems to be the only guy he's completing it to. He did complete one to Brevin Spanford last week, so good for him on that one. But, what'd you say?
Spreading it out.
Yeah. Tight end and one receiver. So, but it seems like it doesn't matter who Minnesota puts at running back. I mean, last week I tweeted it out, but Jordan Newman the running back. He had 6 carries for 25 yards on the year, and then he goes into that game and he gets 40 carries for 200 yards. I mean,
it's crazy.
Crazy that he was able to do that. So, Chris, let's start with you on this one. Illinois at Minnesota. What are your thoughts?
Illinois breaks my heart. They really do. I thought this was a team with Brett Bielema, who was really going to turn the corner this year, and they're just not. They have not looked good this season. PJ Fleck seems to always find a way to, at least put a presentable product on the field out there. I got to go Minnesota in this one. And I think it's going to be a somewhat close game. I think it's going to be a touchdown game. I'm going to take Minnesota 28, Illinois 21.
Minnesota 28-21. Justin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Illinois, man, sloppy on the field. That game they played against us was about the worst football I've ever seen executed from both sides.
Yep.
It's hard for a team to look sloppier than we did that night, but Illinois managed to do that. The run game is getting better, but Minnesota's just doing what they need to do to win. They're not really closing drives out, which is hindering them, of course, but their passing game finally got something going. Like you said, the last game, I think that was the first time they actually passed the 200-yard mark. They can take the ball away. I just think Minnesota will be able to control the clock a little better, and I think it's going to come down to just that. I think Minnesota may make a late score and hold Illinois, and I got Minnesota 20, Illinois 17. So
Minnesota 20, Illinois 17. Yep. I think that you guys got a lot right there as well. This seems like one of those games where it's Iowa light, right?
Yeah.
Because Minnesota, they kind of model themselves after Iowa a little bit. Well, I guess I shouldn't say it that way, but they're kind of like Iowa, but they have better skill players and they do a better job of spreading it out to some different guys out there. And I think that they have a better overall offense, but I think the defense just lacks a little bit more than what Iowa's is. So it's really, really interesting to see what's going to happen. I think if Illinois can protect Luke Altmaier, I do think that he is going to be able to throw to some of these receivers. I don't think they'll get anything deep. I think Tyler Nubin is too good back there in the secondary, and I think their other safety, I'm forgetting what his name is right now, but I think he's really, really good as well. And so I think that Luke Altmaier might be able to pass, but I also just think Minnesota, they have a good pass rush as well, and I think that they're going to take advantage of that. So I think I'm going to go with a 27-17 in favor of Minnesota. I think that Minnesota gets some big run plays, and I think that Brevin Spanford catches a few more balls this time, and that turns into a much bigger factor. So, all right, let's move on to Penn State at Maryland. Penn State at Maryland. Penn State is only favored by 8.5 here. I thought they would have been favored by more, but Maryland, they've lost 3 straight ever since they lost to Ohio State. They've lost 2 more. Penn State didn't look very good last week against Indiana after losing to Ohio State, so I guess there's some kind of curse out there. You lose to Ohio State and you don't look good. So who knows what these two teams are going to look like. Justin, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I might get a little dicey here on this one. Maryland, for me, is the hardest team to predict. I don't know what it is. It seems like they have explosiveness and dynamicism, and then sometimes it's just not working for them. So, Drew Allar had a good game, 3 touchdowns. But I think it's his styles make fights kind of match up. I think Penn State lacks really any big play ability, a real explosiveness. And I think Maryland, that's their strength, so I think Maryland's going to cause a lot of problems for Penn State personally. I think Talia Tagovailoa is going to be able to kind of work because he had 3 touchdowns, a pretty good game last week. I just think Drew Allar is a little bit, I think he's a little bit too simplistic in the way he runs the offense. Maryland can't stop big plays, which is the problem there because Penn State needs to take advantage of that, and I don't think they'll be able to. Good against the run, but just bad stylistically for Maryland. I actually think Maryland wins this one 27-24.
Wow. That's going to be wild if that happens. Chris, before we get to you, I want to reference, we had Sonny comment here and let us know that Brett Bielema is 9-0 in his career versus Minnesota. So who knows? Maybe that'll continue to 10-0, or maybe PJ Fleck will find his first win against Bielema like he found his first win against Kirk Ferentz this season. So, but that's interesting. We'll see. We'll see there for sure. Thanks for sharing that, Sonny. Chris, your thoughts on this Penn State Maryland game?
Well, I'll tell you, I feel like Maryland is a team that's broken at this point. They started off hot. They came into Ohio State 5-0. Mm-hmm. Much like that team up north, they had a nice, soft as a baby's bottom schedule that I think got a lot of people hyped on Maryland. I'm not gonna lie, I bought into the hype a little bit. Penn State's a respectable team. Aller is not a great quarterback. We've seen that, but you know what? He's efficient if he doesn't have to do anything fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
He can be efficient. He can get you the little throws, the dump offs, the 15-yard things, get it into the hands of his playmakers and watch them work.
Yep.
I think Penn State defensively is very good. So for me, I think that this one is Penn State 35, Maryland 14, because at this point in the season, Maryland to me feels like maybe not Tagovailoa, but most of the Maryland team feels like a team that's given up at this point.
I think one of the reasons Maryland's hard to predict for me is because they still look daunting to me on our schedule as one of the teams that's going to be the toughest to beat. I don't know. I guess part of me feels like that they might play up to this game and really just kind of. I think part of me is hoping that they'll win this, and then that way, when the Nebraska game comes around, they're not going to get their get-back game against us or something like that. So right. I would much rather Maryland lose because that would definitely help us in the grand scheme of things, the big picture. But Penn State's schedule has been pretty favorable as well. And I'm like, I got to go with an underdog eventually. So,
yeah. Yeah, no, I think if you're going to go with an underdog, Maryland's not a bad choice here. Illinois wouldn't be a bad choice either. But yeah, I think Maryland – there's too many things that have to go right for them. I feel like Penn State is one of those teams that they can kind of get dirty and they can kind of win in a few different ways. I really feel like for Maryland, they have to hit big plays. They have to dominate the line of scrimmage, which is going to be really, really hard against this Penn State team. So that way Penn State can't run all over them. I think there's too many things that have to go right for them. So I am going to pick Penn State 27-17. I think Drew Aller finds a couple of deep balls in this one. He's had a deep ball to Keandre Lambert-Smith last week to win them the game versus Indiana, so maybe that gives him a little bit of confidence and he'll throw it downfield a little bit more. But I think that, unfortunately for Maryland, this Penn State secondary is going to be too good. Maryland doesn't have Marvin Harrison Jr. on their team, so yeah. I mean, Jashawn Jones and some of those other guys, they're good, but they're not best in the Big Ten good or anything like that. So. All right, let's move on to Iowa at Northwestern, or I guess not really at Northwestern because this is at Wrigley Field, so it's kind of a neutral site game. Northwestern is winless at Wrigley Field. They lost to Illinois and they lost to Purdue, I think it was. So they're going to this one trying to get their first win at Wrigley Field. Chris, what are your thoughts with Illinois being favored by 5?
Well, I'll tell you.
Or Iowa being favored by 5, sorry.
Yeah. We talk about the urge to take the underdog. This is where I'm going to do it, guys.
Yep.
I think that Northwestern, unlike Michigan State, is a team that's handled their adversity this year a little bit better. I think we saw them last week have a pretty good game. I feel like Iowa is a team that offensively is anemic at best. Don't get me wrong. Defensively, they are great. But offensively, they are anemic, and that's why we saw the interim athletic director call a meeting this week and say, guess what, Brian Ferentz? You suck. You're out.
Move it on.
Move it on out. We'll let you finish out this year so you can say bye-bye to daddy. But you know what? You are done, my friend. I don't see this being a high-scoring affair. I see Northwestern doing just enough to get it done. I'm going to take Northwestern 13-10 over Iowa.
Wow, 13-10 in favor of the Northwestern Wildcats. Justin, you agree with them? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this game will be on the list of games that I will not one to watch, even if there's nothing else on.
It's going to be ugly.
It's going to be really ugly. Yeah, I mean, 19.5 points per game. They're allowing 14.5. It's just been a whole lot of ineptitude on offense is the nicest way to put it. Iowa, for what they've never been a good offensive team. So for them to have an inept offense means things are really bad. They're still sticking to their usual formula, good defense and stuff like that. Northwestern is very similar. Not a very good offense. But an okay defense. Their defense is definitely better than their offense. Part of me thinks Iowa will be able to impose their will most of the game, but I do think Northwestern is scrappy, and I think they might pull away late or pull it out late. So I'm definitely going to bet the under, but my score prediction is 6-3, and we all lose. No, I'm just playing. It's 21 Northwestern 21, Iowa 17. So.
Wow. 21. Wow, they're gonna hit the over on the legendary low over under of 30.
I do
never take the over in an Iowa game.
I can't do a 30 though. Over. Like it's ridiculously low. There's something has to give. I think maybe I just want to see the world burn. I don't know. Yeah. I see Iowa scored 21 points. Like
you want to see Kirk Ferentz just completely flipping out on the side.
They could have 21. They could have the over at 6, and they would find a way to play a 3-2 ball game.
I know I hate Iowa, so I'm trying not to be anti-Iowa though. Trying my best here.
No, I get it. I mean, I get
let it go, my friend. Let it go.
All right,
I get rooting for the underdog. I do think that Northwestern's a really good story this year. I think David Braun is finally getting some of the recognition for what he did. I feel like as soon as he won 2 games this season, it was like, wow, great job, David Braun, because nobody was really picking him to win any more than that Howard game.
If they don't offer this guy the head coaching job, they need to have their heads examined. He's done a great job this season.
He has. David Braun, he's in the running for me as one of the coaches of the year. I don't know if him or Greg Schiano is leaving the top 3.
I thought they were toast. I thought they were going to be nothing.
Yeah. But the offensive line has played better than I thought they would. I mean, obviously it's not great, but the run blocking hasn't been terrible. The pass blocking obviously can improve, but I think that Northwestern is a better team than we were given credit for. However, I am going to go with the favorite. I think that at the end of the day, Iowa's special teams is really going to hinder Northwestern here. Tory Taylor is going for the record for the most punting yards in a season, and I think that he is going to have another good game to make that happen. The dude is just absolutely blasting the ball, almost 50 yards per punt, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
Especially given the number of chances he gets.
Yeah, he's got like 7 punts per game.
He gets a lot of practice.
Yeah, he's got like 7 punts per game or something like that. So it's just like, wow. And of course, Iowa's not in midfield very often, so it's not like he's like having to, directionalize it or whatever.
Right.
To
no pooch punting here.
No coffin corners. Nope.
Yeah, exactly. Coughing. That was the
booming
what I was looking for. But I do think Cooper DeJean probably gets a punt return in this one. I think that he is dynamic. I think that he probably is reeling a little bit after that Minnesota one, which we won't revisit that. I know everybody's arguing about it, and I have my thoughts. But I think that Cooper DeJean is going to get himself one of these punt returns, and I think at the end of the day, Iowa's going to be able to move the ball well enough to get a field goal or 2, and they'll win 13-6.
So were you saying it's a fair catch or no? By the rule, I say it says yes, but by what they call inconsistency, I think it was messed up.
Yeah, I don't think that his arm was waving enough. I saw it go back and forth twice. I don't think that's enough for you to say like, oh, invalid. Because at the end of the day, like you could just be like running and like have your arm out there for a minute.
They do that all the time. Players do that all the time. They just decided to call it in that one game. So breaking out the rule book and being like, well, this is the rule, but like, okay, we have to be realistic here and be like, well, they don't call that ever. So why is he going to think like all of a sudden I can't do this now?
Yeah. Yeah, I posted a picture on Twitter. It was like this kid who was running with his arms just only by his side. I was like, this is how they want punt returners to run from now.
Because you're like, even when you're trying to yell, get away, like your natural instinct is to kind of signal that,
Yeah, no, I think it makes a whole lot more sense when like they're standing still and they're doing like one of these or whatever. Like I think that makes a whole lot more sense than like the I'm in running motion and my arm goes back and forth twice. But I was telling Minnesota fans, like, I don't take anything away from them. Like, the call
No,
was the call, and their defense held strong, and they won the game. So,
wasn't their fault.
yeah, like, I think you give Minnesota credit for the win, but I think at the same time, you look at it and you say, look, that was a sucky situation for Iowa, and they probably could have or maybe should have won, whatever you want to call it.
But then you realize it's Iowa and you move on.
Yeah, and you say. Now the Big Ten West is a little bit more interesting because you have 4 teams who are tied for.
Yeah, exactly right.
So, all right, let's get to the last one here. We have Wisconsin at IU. Wisconsin coming off their loss to Ohio State. They now have their backup quarterback. I don't know the status of Braylon Allen, but it's possible he will not play. So they may have their third-string running back playing. So the Badgers are a little bit in a hard place here, and IU, of course, can't figure out their quarterback situation. They seem to flip-flop back and forth between Taven Jackson and Brendan Sorsby, and I think that they got rid of Jalen Lucas and punt returning last week because of a fumble. Long and behold, the new punt returner fumbles the same time. So I think that Indiana's spiraling a little bit here. Wisconsin is favored by 9.5. Chris, what are your thoughts on this one?
For me, like you said, Braylon Allen, from what I'm hearing, is probably unlikely for Saturday, which means they're going to have to go with Jackson Acker, who I think is who I think is serviceable. I think he had a couple of decent runs against Ohio State. Indy is just, man. Tom Allen is the chief of the Keystone Cops of college football. Yep. Indiana can just not get out of their own way. I'm a huge Luke Fickell fan. I think he's going to have these guys ready. I thought that at times the kid from Indiana, the quarterback, not Jackson, who was our other friend,
Brendan Sorsby.
Sorsby. Sorsby, I thought at times looked good last week, but then he also looked like he got banged up a bit. So I don't even know if he's an option for him next week. Or this weekend. So, for me, I really think Wisconsin's going to win this one. However, like you said earlier, teams that come off a loss to Ohio State typically do struggle. I think Wisconsin wins it, but I think it's closer than most people think. I like this one, Wisconsin 20, Indy 17.
Wow. All right. Justin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought Sorsby had his best game to date last week. I'm not sure his status. I didn't really look at that before the show or anything, so I'm unsure if he's injured. Sorry about my dog.
You're fine.
He's a psychopath. Indiana's defense, they're about 90th or below in about every defensive category you can imagine. It's been tough sledding for them defensively. I don't think it'll matter that Braylon Allen is out if he is officially out, because I think whoever steps in there is going to be able to run on that defense anyways. I got Wisconsin 27, Indiana 17. I do think they barely cover. Wisconsin does so, but it'll be interesting because Wisconsin has been very inconsistent on the offensive side of the ball, with that air raid coming in compared to what they used to do. So, but I don't think against Indiana, I think no matter what that offense looks like, I think they're going to be able to just do what they need to against that defense of Indiana for sure.
Yeah, I remember back to that Ohio State game when Indiana's defense was playing really well, and I thought, wow, Indiana might have one of the best defenses in the Big Ten this year, but their offense has just let them down so many times. I feel like they start every game playing pretty good defense, and you're like, oh, we see, except for the Maryland game, but you kind of see like.
I'm sorry.
What,
did I say? Never mind. Go ahead. Sorry.
But I was going to say, like, in that Maryland game, it was just a bunch of big plays that made it wide open there in the beginning. But I think that Indiana at the beginning of the games has a good defense. And then later on in the game, it's like the offense is just so inept that they get tired and teams start scoring on them. Right. I mean, it kind of like what happened to Iowa against Penn State earlier this season. It's
96th in penalty yards, too.
Yeah, so and that's what happens when you get gassed is you get tired, you get lazy, and you're not able to make the plays, and they don't have depth either. So that's the big thing as well. So I do think that Indiana if they had a better offense who could keep the defense off the field, I think the defense would be better. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a defense or if you don't have an offense that can stay on the field, then your defense is going to suffer for it. So
Yep.
I'm kind of like you in this one, Justin. I have Wisconsin winning 27-14. I think they cover, and I think that the Badgers get right after their loss to Ohio State. And I just don't think that Bloomington is a very tough environment to play
Nope.
in. So, and I don't think the fans are overly excited over there for Tom Allen or anything like that. So,
And I agree with him. I'm a huge Luke Fickell guy.
Yep.
Luke Fickell was one of the people on my short list of people that I wanted Nebraska to get. So I do believe that Wisconsin's gonna be trending up, as well. So.
Yeah, I think we'll have a good conversation here for the next few years of who made the better hire between Nebraska and Wisconsin, because I think both of them were home run hires at the end of the day, and I think both of them are going to excel, and both of them are going to be up there, have up their teams in the conference for most years. So
we have a long time to hear that,
right? Everybody thought it would be with Scott Frost, and then he just could never win the one score game.
Little did we know he was drunk and lazy behind the scenes.
Yeah.
He got that bag and didn't want to work.
Exactly. Yeah. So
he should have hired himself Connor Stillion to go out there and
shoot. I don't even know if that could
get some calls for him.
We would have found a way to lose by one score, I promise.
Yeah. Connor Stallions would have handed him his manifesto, and he'd been like, "I'm not reading that."
We didn't allow a first down in the second half to Michigan State and lost that game. We had a lead, didn't allow a first down in the second half, and lost the game. So our punter punted the wrong side of the damn field. Yeah,
that has to hurt.
Jaden Reed, man, I'll never forget it.
That was just kind of the Scott Frost era for you.
Yep.
So. But hey, on to bigger and better things. So with Matt Rule. So.
Yep.
All right, guys. Hey, that's all I got for everything today. You guys have any more thoughts about the Big Ten or college football, anything like that you want to point out?
Well, can I mention something? And it's not necessarily college football, but it is Big Ten related. College sports, the Big Ten, and in Ohio State, as well as the University of Indiana, lost a legend today.
That's right.
With the passing of the general. So just want to say hats off to the general, and of course prayers out to his family and friends. He was a true legend in coaching, and one of the greatest characters to watch. Nobody will ever. I personally remember the chair throws, the ball kicks, the interviews. Oh my gosh, he was such a great interview. So the world of college sports is going to truly miss this guy.
Absolutely.
I saw Bob Knight highlight reel earlier today after he passed away, or the news came out that he passed away, and I just watched it and kind of got a tear to my eye a little bit. So it's kind of weird. It's weird that you get this connected to sports and all that goes on. So
and it's just such a it's like I didn't really even grow up watching a ton of him. It's just more so like over time you see all the clips, you hear all the stories, you see all the interviews, and you kind of just learn, and grow and gravitate towards, who he was as a competitor and as a person. And just, that's a fire that you don't see in a lot of guys. So, it's just a big time loss for sure.
Yeah. My mother and father-in-law, they got married around the time that Bob Knight took the job at Indiana, and they're huge IU fans. And so they were kind of going through it tonight a little bit with all that, the memories and stuff. So,
yep.
Yeah. So our condolences to the Knight family and all the IU fans out there. Thoughts and prayers to you for sure. So, all right. Thanks for bringing that up, Chris. Appreciate it. We're going to get out of here. We will see you all next time on the Big Ten Huddle. Thanks to Chris. Thanks to Justin. Have a great night.